Now, this is just an example of my own personal statement. That I want to give an example with what I wrote, which may not have some of the things that I mentioned earlier on, but this is just one particular program I applied for and I got it. And so I want to believe that it played a major role, despite the fact that there are other things that may have also played a role in that regard. So let's read this personal statement verbatim. There may be some typos in it, but this was how I submitted it. I redacted, removed some names that I may have mentioned that are not necessary for the purpose of my presentation. But to a large extent, the statement is as was submitted. So I started like this. I have always had passion for science. You see how I emphasize that, because that's nobody's going to doubt whether it's my statement. I'm telling you that I have had passion for science, right? Remember what I said earlier, say something that is not complicated. So it is easier for anybody to agree that this is true than the opposite. But I was trying to say that when I make this statement, I've always had passion for science. It's a strong statement. Nobody's going to dispute that, because I will give reasons. You will see that it has always, I have, always had a science background. By the way, that also is clear in my CV. So nobody's going to dispute it. You don't start to complicate a statement that you have always wanted to be a doctor right from your child at 2 years old. And it becomes very difficult for anybody to hack, and anybody, I start doubting. So your personal statement starts with a comment that people will begin to doubt. It's very difficult for them to actually agree with so many other things you're writing later on. So you want to be careful that the very first statements are statements of fact, or something that is solid, or that you are going to back with some results, as you will see here. I have always had passion for science and successfully completed my trainings to date with outstanding performances and won scholarships in the process. Okay, if you want to stop now and go and look at my CV to see whether that is true or false, you can stop and go. But this is a statement, it's a bold statement. Okay, what I'm seeing as a reviewer or as a professor reading this now is, let me see from the rest of this thing you have written, whether there is any proof, whether I can agree with this thing you have written here. You see how the statements are read sometimes. Okay, I went on to say here, my undergraduate degree was in medical lab science in Nigeria. Science here, okay? That's undergraduate degree. I was the best graduate student. Thereafter, I completed the 1-year mandatory internship training, which was split into 3 months rotations in core diagnostic laboratories. What point am I trying to make here? That I have some very strong laboratory exposure, okay? Namely in clinical chemistry, hematology, stroke immunology, microbiology, stroke parasitology, and histopathology. I completed this internship and got licensed to practice, with which I worked as a laboratory scientist during National Youth Service Corps. I didn't explain what National Youth Service Corps actually is in this particular statement. But I think that I did emphasize in my CV that this is mandatory for Nigerian graduates. Right. I later secured overseas postgraduate scholarship. Okay, I did mention here that I have 1 scholarship. Here, this is scholarship here. Remember, this is scholarships, but I have mentioned 1 scholarship here from the Nigerian government, and I proceeded to England for Masters in Biomedical Science. There, I learned biostatistics and became interested in its utility in solving biological questions, which is now a key approach I apply in research. What point am I mentioning? That even though I have medical laboratory science background, I have also learned biostatistics and, became interested in applying it. And this is something that I am now using. I graduated with a distinction. Okay, remember that I said outstanding performances here. Mentioned that I'm a best graduate student. I mentioned that I have distinction. Even if I don't have anything else, these 2 are enough to justify, to at least support what I said in the first statement, okay? After a thesis on breast cancer metastasis. I also got a certification as a biomedical scientist by the Health and Care Professions Council, England. These are the people that certify you qualified as a biomedical scientist. Everybody who understands that knows that that means that a competent authority has said that I have the competence to practice as a biomedical scientist. So my training, literally speaking, as far as biomedical science is concerned, is solid. That's what I'm trying to emphasize here, without necessarily telling them that, hey, look, I am the best guy, I have set solid training. I'm saying these are the things I have done, look at it. If you want to go to the Health and Care Professions Council to verify, it's possible to see whether I'm a biomedical scientist, right? And if they go check and it's true, they say, that is true. We checked and it's true. Okay. The more things they're able to verify, if there's a way to verify them, the more they believe the totality of your personal statement. That's what you should keep in mind. I proceeded to doctoral studies in pursuit of an academic research career ambition, and have recorded some accomplishments. Okay. I tried to be a little bit modest in presenting this. I said some accomplishments, right? But it's actually not a some accomplishment, it's a significant accomplishment. Okay. I started here now. I said I was awarded a 3-year PhD scholarship from Nigeria. Remember, we said earlier on scholarships. So I think I have completed that now by mentioning another scholarship too. Okay. Verification of your validation of what you have already said, bold statement that you made in the beginning. During PhD in Germany, I worked on liver cancer metabolism from bioinformatics analysis experiments to manuscript writing in a lab where this should be where I have to correct this typo, in a lab where neither metabolism or bioinformatics were the research focus. Like the lab I worked in during my PhD time wasn't necessarily a metabolism lab, nor was it a bioinformatics lab. You will see the reason why I mentioned this later on, because I wanted to use it to emphasize that I initiated collaboration and stuff, that I was able to look outside the lab to solve problems. Okay, so I studied metabolic alterations. Here I mentioned my research. Remember, we mentioned earlier on that you should emphasize if you did research. I studied metabolic alterations and whether altered metabolism affects liver cancer cells' response to treatment. So the point was, we were looking at whether metabolic changes in liver cancer affect the way they respond to treatment. Since our lab was not a metabolism lab, I quickly learned to initiate collaboration. I think that this is the point I wanted to make by emphasizing that my lab was not a metabolism lab. And the key point here is the collaboration that I want to emphasize, that I was able to. There's not enough space for me to get into the details of that in this personal statement, but I went straight to mention that in the end, I succeeded in publishing 4 first author papers. So there is a way to verify this statement, even if I did not go into details. If you go to check these publications, you will be able to, number one, is it true that I had publications? You will be able to see that I did have publications, number one. Number two, all of those people that were in the author list from the same lab? No. So I have already told you I initiated collaboration. So that means I may have gotten people from, I was able to bring people from outside our lab to help me to get my project done. Okay. So in the end, I succeeded in publishing 4 first author papers from my studies, including a 5th pending publication. Now, that is not a verifiable comment, okay? But again, because you already have mentioned 4 published papers already that they can verify, they can believe that the 5th one is coming. Yes, okay? I discovered several metabolic gene changes in human liver tumors. I found that an impaired metabolism triggers pan activation of kinases. Now, this is a jargon for those who may be in engineering, so please forgive me for these few seconds, notably PEC. However, inhibiting the X signaling pathway in an altered metabolic state increased cell proliferation by channeling glucose-derived carbon to tricarboxylic acid cycle. I think I fell short of giving the citation here. When I'm reviewing personal statements, I would encourage people to put in this place a reference so that the people can go out of this for which one actually was this particular study. Okay, so that's what I would have done differently if I were to write this statement again. Thus, I discovered that kinase inhibitors, example sorafenib, which is used in clinical liver cancer treatment, induce metabolic pathways as a mechanism of resistance. Now you see that from here to here, I have given an overview of what I worked on. This is in 3 sentences or 4. I see some of you use the whole paragraph to discuss your undergraduate thesis alone. This is a PhD work that I have summarized in more or less 3 sentences. So don't dwell too much. Again, we'll come back to the point of dwelling too much on one thing to the point that it becomes too difficult for us to follow your line of argument. So give summary. I jumped immediately to other, I said, besides my work, I assisted other studies as a co-author listed in my CV. I cannot list all of them here. Now, outside the lab, I actively contributed to research and outreach. What is the point here? I was not just a lab workhorse sitting in the lab every day. I had other things going on outside the lab. And I give example. For example, I helped to organize International PhD Symposium in Heidelberg. Okay, that's an example. I was a student ambassador of the European Association for Cancer Research. That's another example. And a reviewer of the European Association for Cancer Research Image of the Month for 1 year. That's another example. Okay, so you give specific points. Then we find that I was one of the organizing committee members. If you want to search that, if you search the catalog of USCR members, you will see my name. I think you should also mention that I'm an ambassador, right? This one may not be verifiable because the reviewers are sometimes anonymous. I attended over 10 national and international conferences and presented orally or posters. This is listed in my CV, so they'll be able to see it. I was awarded grants and bursaries for most of the conferences. I also listed this in my CV. They should be able to see it there if they check. In the graduate program, I participated in research retreat and completed many courses, stroke activities, and by the completion of my PhD, I had over 40 credit points, far exceeding the required 15 credit limit. So this is, I'm not talking about some of my achievements. I have not said that I'm better than anybody. I'm just telling you what I have done, okay? And so they can make the assessment. So I'm saying that now because some of you just go and say, or there were 1,000 people in the class and I was the only one who, no, that's not your business. Just tell them what you have done and let them now make the assessment. I supervised 2 master's students. Now I'm talking about other contributions that I made besides just my PhD on laboratory particle rotations and organized tutorials for master's medical students. In 2017, I graduated with the grade summa cum laude. I didn't mention that because obviously from where, because everything has been in Heidelberg, from the University of Heidelberg. Anybody that hears that knows already that it's not a grade that you will just get, right? So you would have performed already well. So that already, for me, when I said that, I know it already makes the point of, suppose what I said earlier on, outstanding performances. You know, a PhD with summa cum laude from the University of Heidelberg is considered, you know, an over and above performance. And so that is by itself enough to justify everything else I've said. Now, if a reviewer is reading and comes to this, but they'll say, okay, well, no wonder I can see exactly why some of these things you are saying now makes sense. So some of you just write something and you don't provide justification, a way to really make people believe the rest of what you are saying, even the things you have not even said. So for example, if you had a first class, find a way in your personal statement to emphasize it. You cannot have a first class and not mention it in your personal statement, from one word or the other. You know, well, somehow some people maybe can just leave it because there are other things that suggest in that, but I will be very specific because it helps your application. Now, as I prepared to move to the US, this was a fellow application I made as I was planning to move to the US actually. I helped PhD students in the lab in their project. In one example, I facilitated an in-depth analysis of PRX1 level in liver cancer and aging, helped to design experiments to characterize the gene function and wrote the manuscript. I also played a key role in other projects, e.g. on the membrane protein caveolin, and a collaborative project on the impact of LPS, lipopolysaccharides, on liver cells. I have completed 2 invited review assignments for 2 scientific journals. At that time, it was like 2. I think now I have reviewed 2. I don't know how many, a lot. But you know, you're giving examples of some of the things you have done. So why are you doing all this? What is your goal? My goal is to become a faculty member, you know, become a professor, run an independent lab, recruit and help train young scientists in basic and translational cancer research. Over the course of my training to date, I have tried to prepare myself towards achieving these career goals by exposing myself to training opportunities, including on techniques, collaborations, networking, scientific writing, student mentorship, grant writing, ethics, and peer review. I have given some examples on why some of these things up here. But these are some, and if you look in my CV, you see the rest of them. These are some of the things that I have done to prepare myself. But note the use of word here. I have tried, so that you don't say that you are the almighty formula that can do everything just by yourself and stuff. You have to demonstrate humility when you communicate too. So you have to use certain kind of words, certain strategic positions to emphasize your achievements, but to tone it down. Remember also the use of the word here, some accomplishments. These things I've written here are not some accomplishments. These are, in any university, these are really extraordinary achievements for a PhD student. But when I communicate it, I don't overly emphasize it, because the CV and the personal statement, the facts that I'm presenting before them, emphasize my point for me. I'm not struggling hard to make any point. It is obvious. If they want to hire me, they will hire me or take me or offer me the fellowship. If they don't want to take me, they will not take me. Maybe there are other better students, but my own facts are clearly stated so that anybody who reads it will appreciate them. That is your goal in your personal statement. Your goal is not to overblow your achievements or to sort of, spend too much time on them. Just state them summarized in this way. So over the course of my training to date, I have tried to prepare myself towards achieving these career goals by exposing myself to training, so opportunities, including on techniques, collaborations, networking, scientific writing, student mentorship, grant writing, ethics, and peer review. I am highly motivated to continue learning. So you're not telling them that that is closed, that you have known everything in the planet. No, I want to continue to learn. That's why I'm also applying for this. Because if I don't see a need to apply for it to improve myself even more, then there's no need for me to apply. Okay, so I am highly motivated to continue learning. I strongly believe this program, what I'm applying for, will be a perfect preparatory step to help me build on my prior achievements and stay focused on reaching my career goals. Okay, you have to express belief in the program you're applying for. Okay, and in some instances, you have to provide justifications for that belief, but I didn't have to, because at some point when you have already written made some good points, there's no point stretching more. Okay, now I need training on writing competitive grants and how to establish and run research lab. A research lab, it should be. Okay. Now look at the point I want to emphasize here, need. So despite what you have achieved, you have to be able to establish one or two things you are looking at, particularly that when you get into this program, you will be learning. Why are you applying for a master's program or a PhD when you should be working? Why? Because you want to learn skill set X, Y, Z, because you want to move on to the next career step using this thing you will learn. It should be summarized in this way, in one sentence, without any further ambiguity. That's what I'm telling you today. This is why sometimes some of the personal statements I read, I feel unhappy, because they don't address in a very explicit terms why you are applying for the program. There may be other things. Of course, this is not the only thing I'm going to learn in the program I was going to apply for. And by the way, how to establish and run a lab is a big deal. It's not one thing. Everybody knows there are so many things inside it. Also, but I have mentioned the two main things that I have in focus. Everything else will fall in place. That's how you should be thinking. I also want to build a solid scientific network and collaboration in the US and internationally. Okay, you have to express some other thing that you are looking forward to doing in this particular program or fellowship you're applying for. Okay, I am confident that participating in this program will be of enormous assistance in my quest to achieve my career aspirations. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a personal statement that is in one page. I think there is still about 1 or 2 lines left. You see, it's well broken down paragraphs. It's clear. It has the message. It is convincing. Additional information can be found on my CV. I have given at least a hint somewhere that there are a lot of things that are listed on my CV that I may not be able to accommodate in this personal statement. So there is no need for people to submit a 2-page or 3-page personal statement whereby we cannot actually hold on to anything. And this is, by the way, after my PhD. That means all the achievements of undergraduates, all the achievements of masters, all the achievements of PhD. After my PhD, I have summarized them in less than 1-page personal statement. This is what we need to do when we prepare for these applications we're making now for masters or for PhD. Go straight to the point and deliver your message. And if it is very clear and if the substance is there, it will convince 1 or 2 graduate programs to consider you for admission. So I will stop it here and take questions.